Hello, podcast listeners. We know podcasts are a great way to catch up on a program that you may have missed on KSJE, and it's provided as a free service of this radio station. But you know, KSJE is now listener-supported, and so while you enjoy this podcast, we hope that you'll also take some time to join KSJE. Become a member today. It's quite easy to do. Just go to our website at ksje.com/support and pick the level of support that best matches your budget. Thanks again for listening. Here's your podcast. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, your community hospital with a rich heritage that dates back to before New Mexico was a state. We've been improving the health of the Four Corners since 1910. As a nonprofit hospital, San Juan Regional Medical Center is a values-driven organization. We strive to deliver on our mission to personalize health care and create vitality and enthusiasm in healing. We are here for you when you need us, offering a comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and emergency care services. Well, let me turn to my guests who are here with me this morning again to talk about the topic of hospital security. Officer Michele Delese is here from the Farmington Police Department. Good morning.
Good morning, Scott.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for asking.
You bet. It's great to have you here. Also, Vince Mitchell is here from San Juan Regional Medical Center, the Director of Safety and Security. Good morning, Vince.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Scott.
Thanks for coming in to talk a little bit about this important topic. We don't really hear a lot about what goes into keeping hospitals and patients and visitors and staff safe, but it is an important issue. And you have a training exercise coming up next week, Vince, don't you, at the hospital?
We do. On May 15th, we're going to have an active shooter training exercise.
Right.
Working with Farmington Police. One of the things we recognize is that we have an obligation to take care of the patients and our staff and everybody that comes and visits the hospital for whatever reason. We do have a duty to care for them, so try to make it as safe as we can. And part of this exercise is working with Farmington Police to ensure our response is as seamless as it can be, but kind of give our staff some tools to care for those folks that they're in charge of until law enforcement responds.
Right. And it seems like that is an issue that is of more importance these days. Luckily, I haven't heard of or remember hearing too many incidents at hospitals, but of course, we just had another shooting in a school, and we've just had other incidents as well. And so, Michele Delese, obviously for law enforcement, you all probably need to know what you're getting into if you have to respond to a call at the hospital from something that's going on, correct?
Absolutely, Scott. You know, we train a lot in the schools. As you know, we've been here before to talk about that.
Right.
But the hospital, this is a great opportunity for everyone to be aware and to be able to respond and react, because you never know what's going to happen when it happens. And you have to, we train a lot and go out and do businesses and churches and schools, of course, but just you have to think about what you're going to do if. And I know that school last couple days ago, one of the kids grabbed a baseball bat and he said, "I'm going down fighting," you know. So, I mean, that's a good attitude to have, but what else can you do other than fight?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's important. And for both of your organizations, I guess it's important for you all to know what each other can be required to do or expected to do in case of an emergency, and what the other side may need to be doing as well. How the police are going to respond, how your hospital staff can respond. You have security at the hospital, so they can do a certain amount of things, I suppose, right?
We do, absolutely. And part of this training, though, I want to make sure that we emphasize some of the steps that we can take to prevent an incident from even happening. You know,
right.
Make sure our workplace violence policies people understand them, understand that some of the things that we do, like being courteous to folks. I'm wearing my badge today. Having a badge at our facility, it lets other people know that you are where you are and you're part of the organization, so you'll know if somebody is there for something nefarious, for instance, you could pick up on that pretty quick. But there's a lot of things we want to make sure that we do to prevent an incident from ever even happening. So that's one of the components we're going to talk about in the trainings.
And I certainly don't want to make the tone of the program fear-mongering or anything like that for folks to think that they can't be safe at the hospital or anywhere in our community. I mean, there is certainly violent things that happen. There's a comment on Facebook about a sad commentary on the state of our country talking about this issue. But you'd have to talk about it just like we talk about school safety and church safety and things along that line in order to prepare for it. I would assume it's not something you want to ignore. Wouldn't
Absolutely.
that be?
Absolutely. We don't want to ignore it. We want to get out in front of it, which is why it's important to have the conversation about it and talk about our response and some of our responsibilities to each other.
And isn't it important to do it in a transparent way so your employees know what's going on and your staff and the visitors and even the patients, I suppose, to a certain degree, know what you're doing to keep them safe when they're at your facility?
Absolutely. I think it's important that they do know that we do take safety and security very important. I mean, it's very important to us as an organization, and we take it very seriously. So this is just one component of many that we do. And for this is one of those things that you can't, it should be out in front, because it will, if it does ever happen, regardless of the location. The things that we can do can help save lives, truthfully.
Sure. Michele, Delese, I want to ask you a little bit from the police perspective. Again, you don't want any student to ever feel fearful of going to school. That should be a safe place for them, just like the hospital should be a place where we all go to get better, not to get hurt or worse. And so it's kind of that fine balancing act, isn't it, to do some of these training exercises in places like this where we don't expect violence to happen?
Too many times I read after some shootings, people say, well, I thought it was a firecracker, or, I don't think this is happening, or it's part of a play. No. I think it falls on the responsibility of everyone. If something does not look right, say something. You have to say something. I know a lot of people don't like to get involved. They might see something that they're like, well, it's none of my business. I don't want to get involved. What if I'm wrong? And then we always say, but what if you're right? So it falls on the responsibility of the whole community to take care of each other, like Vince said. So we take it very seriously, obviously, and training all the time.
Sure. And I know the hospital is a busy place. There's a lot of things that are going on. There's a lot of employees, and I forget how many, but I know it's several hundred that are there on a daily basis, and they're coming and going, and there are patients there. There are visitors coming and going. There are vendors coming and going. I mean, all that is stuff that Vince Michele, I suppose you're expected to keep track of, and make sure everyone's behaving themselves.
There's a lot of moving parts in the organization when you start thinking about it. We have 1,900 employees. The population of patients varies. It could be 100, it could be 140, depending on the day. We've got numerous outpatient clinics that we're responsible for. We provide them with some training as well. And actually, there will be some that will participate in this particular training. So, so it's important to us to prepare for that. It truthfully is. So these moving parts are difficult to manage.
Yeah, and so with this exercise, so take us through a little bit. Is this maybe a tabletop thing? Are there going to be actually things going on in the building? Are you're bringing in folks from your clinics and things like that too?
We are. What we're gonna do is we're gonna cordon off an area of the facility that kind of looks very similar to other areas in the organization. We're going to provide them with some classroom instruction to kind of give them some ideas about steps they can take to improve their response and increase any, essentially improve their response. But two, we'll do this more functional piece, the exercise piece, where with law enforcement in this secured and controlled environment, we'll actually simulate and actually fire off some blank rounds to provide some reality and give some people an opportunity to, one, learn what it truly sounds like, and give them the tools that they need to work through that. And then the third phase is going to be a debrief, so we can talk about it and actually talk about the recovery piece. Okay, the event is over. How are we going to communicate with law enforcement? How is that going to work out to recover and get us back to operational, essentially?
Got it. And so it sounds like to me that if I'm a patient, I won't realize this is going on. This is going to be in a separate area of the hospital.
Correct. For most people in the facility will not know that it's going on. There is one small area that we we couldn't control, but we've taken steps to make sure that it's the patients that are in this particular area are taken care of and secured.
Got it. And they'll be notified what's happening.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Yes.
Which is why you're on the radio this morning.
Exactly.
Letting everybody know what's going on. This is, and again, coming up next week, correct? The date
Next
again?
week.
And the time?
Starts at 9. We have numerous cycles that we're going to go through, try to
Okay.
get as many people as we can through these cycles throughout the day.
Right. And Officer Delese, again, having this at the hospital and in the facility is important for law enforcement, maybe to, again, become familiar with what's going on. I remember an unfortunate situation where there was I think someone in custody who needed medical treatment in the hospital and tried to get an officer's service weapon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And it happened, I mean, I remember the body camera footage that was released, and it happened in just a split second. I mean,
Split second.
I think it was amazing for those of us not in law enforcement or security to see just how quickly the tables kind of turned, and the officer was really struggling to regain control, which he did. But anyway, but that just goes to show just how quickly something, a normal routine day, can turn quite different.
Absolutely, all the time. We're very vigilant about being in our vehicles and walking around. I think anything could turn as quickly, but I'll go back to saying that it's that fast that something could happen, and to be aware, always be aware to see where you are, who's behind you. If I could just put a little plug in, when you're down the Berg Park, don't wear your earbuds. Make sure you know who's around, and you can hear things and be aware.
Well, we had an incident just the other day,
Just the other day,
unfortunately, right?
sure.
It's a fatal stabbing in the park. It doesn't seem to be maybe, it is random, but it was around the bathroom. It wasn't just a random attack of someone on the trails or things like that, I
Right.
guess is what I've read into it.
Right.
So,
But there has been.
Right.
And
And
I
people
want
need to be aware.
Absolutely. It's that transparency. It's a beautiful place, and people
Right.
need to take advantage of it, but also be smart and be aware.
maybe not go running by yourself.
Right.
At certain times of the day, I
Sure.
suppose, right? Would be something to maybe consider. But doing this then at the hospital, this training exercise that Vince Mitchell is talking about, so important for the employees, I guess, then to learn how to be aware in that situation. And is that kind of what the police department's perspective will be?
It is, and it's not just this one day. It's something that we hope to get across that, when you park your car, look around. When you're walking in or out of the building, look around. Walk with a buddy. Just see if something's different. And someone standing on the corner, tell security. Let people keep an eye on things like that. Or if somebody's talking, even an employee starts talking, maybe they had a falling out with their significant other or a family member, and if it happens and there's an employee who has some family issues, then it needs to be told to someone. And so we could be on a little higher alert. And it'll give our officers an opportunity to get to know some of the hospital personnel and hospital security. So we're all looking forward to a successful drill.
Right. Now, has this been done before? I'm trying to remember. Or is it just, we've just not talked about it on the radio, or have you done certain, maybe smaller examples of this, Vince Mitchell? Or
We've done some smaller walk and talk throughs with some of the staff at some of the clinics and things like that. But this is probably the most significant undertaking that I'm aware of in our facility. So we prepared for it, and I'm actually glad Michele touched on that situational awareness, because we are going to talk about that, because it's something that it's important you take with you everywhere. It's that mental preparation, the what if somebody were here, or I like to when I see somebody on the cell phone, and
right,
and I'm sure you know exactly what we're talking about, how people are constantly looking at their screen as they're walking. The earbuds, I think, are another thing that are, people lose sight of the things that are around them and the things that are going on. So we just kind of want to try to remind folks that please be aware of your surroundings and things, because there are clues that are out there. There's a lot of clues that we want to try to pick up on before something does happen.
Sure. And again, I understand some of the listeners may be concerned about having to talk about this on the radio and even have to worry about this, but here we are at San Juan College where even we worry about security on this campus. And again, we've had another campus incident shooting in this country not too long ago. And so it's some of that stuff that we're always talking about, and the same type of messages. Be aware of your surroundings, have a plan, know what to do. I mean, as an adjunct instructor here, I hear that every semester as we get started of what to look forward to, what to be aware of, and all of those things. And you're right. With some of your employees, domestic violence can be a big issue and can spill over into the workplace or other places too. And that's important for your folks to understand, is it not?
It really is. Healthcare, just we look at the demographic of the employees. Largely female. And then you think about the demographic of victims of violence, and that demographic, domestic violence particularly, very, very much female.
Right.
So it's important for us to talk about that. And sometimes I agree it can be uncomfortable, but it's something that has to happen, because we do want to make sure that when people come to work, we want them to feel safe, because if they feel safe, they're better employees, and it's better for our patients, it's better for our visitors, it's better for everybody if they're engaged in what they need to take care of. So, it has kind of a twofold purpose. So.
Right. Michele Delese, Officer Delese, again, the police department I know has been very proactive in trying to get to big employers in the community to talk about some of these things, to make them aware of the potential dangers that could just happen. Not that it's anyone's fault necessarily, but these things that could boil over into their workplace. And I guess that's something for major employers like the hospital, like the school districts to think about and talk about.
Yes, absolutely. And, we do have a safety team, and if anyone's interested, they could contact me through the department. And we can set up some kind of a training. It is very important. And when we do our training, it's very similar. We do a little informational section, and then we do the shooting of the blanks, because, the hearing the gunshot is nothing like television and the movies. They glorify all that. And
I am shocked to hear you say that here on this program, Officer Delese, that the media is not giving an accurate depiction of what a gunshot sounds like.
Right.
But this is why you do it, right?
That's
so
why
folks
we
can
do it.
hear
Absolutely.
and say, well, that doesn't sound anything like I've seen in the movies or on television,
Right.
and they can hear how that does sound,
Yes.
right?
Like a slamming door, book dropping, and people don't realize. And then they second guess themselves.
Right.
And that's where a lot of people run into trouble.
That delay could be important.
Exactly.
And deadly.
Yes.
Perhaps.
Absolutely.
And so that's the important message to get out. Vince Mitchell, I know you have law enforcement background as well, and so you certainly understand maybe more than a lot of other employees at San Juan Regional Medical Center why this is so important and how these things can escalate if you're not careful.
Absolutely. The thing that is good, and I think we talked earlier, is I work with a lot of good people, so they understand the importance of it as well. So, and I'm happy to have their support. I'm glad they're very supportive of taking this exercise as serious as we have, because there's a lot of moving parts that are involved in shutting down a particular area to do that. So it certainly is appreciated.
Right. And this is going to be offered to all of your employees at the hospital?
We do. We, of course, the number that we can take is limited, but we're starting off with a core group. We want to, see how it goes, get some feedback, see what things we can work on to make it better, and then maybe bring it back, next year, maybe make it an annual thing. When you're talking 1,800 employees, it'd take a lot.
Yeah, sure.
Take a lot of cycles to get all of them through. But we do want to make sure that we provide them with that opportunity to.
All departments, I guess, would be impacted by this?
All departments.
So
yes,
from custodial to physicians to nurses to accounting staff, someone from every department, I guess.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people walking those halls, and we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to experience that setting that Michele mentioned. We don't want people to freeze, because that tends to be what people do when they don't understand something that they're not familiar with. The old, that had to be a car backfiring, or somebody got a hold of one of those old M80 firecrackers, and what's the next thing they tend to do? They want to walk out and take a look at it, or Or
Right.
in the healthcare setting, it could be, well, somebody may have been hurt. I need to go check and make sure they are okay. So we want to try to get them to think about the situation and try to process it before they react. Let them think about it, process it, and then decide what they're going to do, what the next steps are.
Right, and that's an interesting point too, Michele, Delese, Officer Delese, about these medical professionals who are in effect first responders like police officers, and so their first thought may be that someone is hurt and I should try to do what I can do to help them. But in the meantime, if there's a situation going on, they could be putting themselves in danger and maybe others.
True, and we train for that every day.
Yeah.
And we tend to go towards the problem.
Yes, you do.
So
of which we're very grateful. Those of us that don't.
That's right.
Yeah.
But we train for it a lot. There's always training going on at the department, and the shifts even do a little bit of training when times are low and there's not a whole lot going on. But they want us to be familiar, walk around the hospital, walk around the schools, see where you can get out and be prepared for something if it should happen in that area. And yeah, we're going to go towards it as well, but luckily we are armed, so we'll be able to take care of the problem
Right.
through all our training that we have.
And as we talk about these incidents that are happening, that continue to happen in our country, and it sounds a little flippant to talk about it this way, but from these tragedies, you learn
Absolutely.
different things about reaction and how to respond. And I know even here, like I said, at San Juan College, in our training, it has changed a little bit of how to not just maybe hide or be quiet in a classroom, but
Right.
now there's also maybe some talk about if you feel you can fight back, to fight back. You mentioned it earlier, maybe with the situation in Colorado, that our understanding of these incidents when they do happen has changed and evolved a little bit over the years.
Absolutely. And we do learn unfortunately, from other incidences. And it is the run, hide, fight options that we teach, but it isn't run, hide, fight. It could be fight, run, hide, fight, run. But, everybody has physical capabilities or disabilities that cannot fight. But which brings to the point, just get yourself trained in your own mind. What am I going to do if I can't run? Because I have, disability, then I need to know where to hide. You're never finished, and then if people do hide, you look for something that if they do, the bad person makes it into the room. You have something to fight with, so you're just never done. I mean, you can run. If you run far, run fast.
Right.
If you hide well, be quiet, turn off your cell phones. Don't get on Facebook right away and advertise what's going on, but be prepared to fight if
Right.
you have to. Fight in teams, which would be better.
And I think some of that empowering or some of that training empowers people who maybe never thought that way before. And they're thinking, well, maybe I can do step A, B, or C, or I can't do this, but can't do X, I could do Y.
Right, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's helpful. Vince Mitchell, is that something you hope the employees of the hospital will discover about themselves when they have this maybe difficult conversation, but important information?
Absolutely. It is a difficult conversation, but I think it's important to have it, especially when you start thinking about some of the ethical decisions they'll have to be faced with in healthcare. Because quite frankly, the people that are there, we're in charge of them. We're in charge of their care. There's a lot of folks there that can't care for themselves. And there's actually, you talk about learning things and evolving. There's actually some thought out there in healthcare facilities specific about maybe being quicker to secure the patient and preserve their life and stuff like that, and then prepare to fight. But
Sure.
still fairly new. They're still kind of working through that because the healthcare setting is so unique. So there's when we talk about learning, we are going to emphasize the run, hide, fight because that's the generally accepted where we're at right now as a country, and I think as a training tool right now. The common denominator in that, though, is the fight.
Right.
So it is a difficult conversation. Some are better about it than others. Our staff will have the opportunity to opt out if they feel like they can't the shots fired, or the blanks, even though they're blanks. For some it may be a little bit troubling. So that part will be optional, but we do want to make sure, one, we deliver the information, and then two, make sure they know that if law enforcement does happen to respond, they'll know what to expect.
Right, and that's, again, another important part of this is to know kind of what the procedures would be in case of an emergency at the hospital, and what to expect from the police department as they arrive on scene, and I guess maybe what you and your staff can do in the meantime.
Correct. Yeah, there's things they can do. When we talk about preserving, and Michele touched on it about preparing to fight. That's the big thing, being prepared in case they do come through that door. So we're going to touch on that as well.
Right. My guests, again, we're talking about hospital security. I'm talking to Farmington Police Officer Michele Delese. Also, Vince Michele is here. He is the Director of Safety and Security at San Juan Regional Medical Center. There is a employee training exercise going on next week, and it is, again, I don't know why I keep blanking on the date. It's May 15th.
May 15th.
Around 10 o'clock or so?
Starts at 9,
Starts
and
at
it
9.
goes throughout the day. We'll be done by 4 or 5.
Gotcha. But an all-day, pretty much sounds like almost an all-day event at a certain part of the hospital, not the entire facility, and will be bringing in useful for a number of your employees.
Correct. And we're hoping that they share it and get some feedback and make it better.
Got it. And do you think, Vince Mitchell, this could be something that maybe in an onboarding process every new employee would have to go through, or at least a smaller version of it, or something like that for the future?
I think we probably will. I think we're going to touch on these topics harder, and because I think it's important to have the conversations, to know that we take it seriously. I think It's important to emphasize that. But two, although it's logistically it's a little bit tougher, I think it's important for them to provide that perspective and let them work through those things that they need to work through. So.
And again, for folks who are concerned that we're having this conversation, that we have to worry about this at our local hospital, that these types of things don't happen in Farmington, New Mexico. Why are you talking about this now? That's just getting people worked up, and I can hear all the critics that are maybe listening to us this morning and watching us this morning, and understandably so. But of course, we have seen incidents of violence in our community, unfortunately, and I suppose you don't want to wait until something horrible happens and then respond. You want to be ahead of this.
That's correct. Statistically, it is very rare, especially in healthcare facilities. Most of the things that they are seeing are targeted violence versus the random acts. When I say targeted, I mean they are looking for somebody specifically, whatever the reasoning is.
Sure.
So, but yes, we do. We want to be out in front of this before something happens. You don't want to wait and when it's done.
Right. And Officer Delese, I know, same type of question, right? You don't want to wait until something happens. Of course, all we have to do is talk about Aztec High School and know that violence has found our community tragically. And so despite all the training that they have done before the incident even, it does happen. And so I guess being prepared is better than waiting for something to happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is unfortunate. And it's funny, Scott, because I do a lot of trainings, and I still have people say it's never going to happen here. And I say, but it already did. So please, be a little vigilant on your own home and walking through the parking lots. It's sad that it happened, obviously here. And we want people to be ahead of the game, and this is a wonderful opportunity for that to happen.
Right. And in the minutes we have remaining, I know there are certain times when maybe the emergency department will go into lockdown, the police will be there, and some things like that, because maybe some suspects in a crime have arrived at the emergency department, and maybe there's some friends or family or associates or some other way to describe them who are also in there, and so that happens.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't want to say fairly regularly, but it happens in our community, and it's another way to kind of keep everyone else safe,
right.
By limiting the amount of access that area of the hospital has, because there's been something violent that's happened in the community, and they've shown up for medical care at the hospital.
Right, and a lot of times, I know Vince could probably talk more on this, but they go into probably a little bit of a lockdown, and make sure the cops are there, maybe a perimeter set up that people can only get so far into the emergency room and stuff like that. So.
Right. Vince, that's...
I do. I think it's important to point out, I think we're going through some construction in our emergency department area right now. And one of the things we did was in the design phase was build an environment that was inviting, but also made us more prepared to deal with those types of situations as they do come up. We'll have some safety glass, some ballistic resistant glass, and the way we have our protocols set up, working with law enforcement, we've actually established a corridor, like a safety corridor, so that we could continue to operate despite these incidents that do happen. We would work with law enforcement on it. I mean, certainly they would be there to make sure it's safe and secured, but we still got to get people to different areas of the hospital for their treatment as as they come in. So
And final question, in the final minutes that we have remaining, I think, again, it's important for the community to understand just how well these two organizations are working together for the safety of the residents of San Juan County and the Four Corners area. If we have to go to the hospital or be in the community, the fact that you two are able to talk to each other and organize this together, I think, is really important for the community to understand, and it says a lot about, I think, the two organizations.
I think the hospital is very fortunate to have Vinnie Mitchell, a retired Farmington officer, and the communication lines are open, and his knowledge plus what, like you said earlier, things that we're learning, definitely make for a good partnership.
Right. Vince Mitchell working with the FPD.
It was a blessing, and it's a blessing working there. It's a blessing working at the hospital now. I think the relationship is great. I've got some folks I still consider friends working there at the police department. Michele is one. And it's good to know that I can call when we need something, and I'd like to think that they feel comfortable getting a hold of me whenever they have something. In fact, I had a sergeant in my office yesterday that needed some help with something and worked through it, gave him what I could. But it's really, I think the value that working together presents. It makes a huge difference when you start thinking about the response. They've even made some recommendations here recently to improve the response. Our hospital embraced that and said, hey, you know what? We do want them, when they respond, we want them to respond as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And we made a couple of changes to kind of help that.
Right. Well, great resources for both of your perspectives. So thank you both for coming in this morning to talk about this important topic, but I know it concerns some folks, but it's important to have these conversations, I think.
Yes.
So I appreciate you both being here.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks for your time, Scott.
You bet.
It.
Thank you both very much. My guests here on KSJE. Back with more, everyone, in just a moment. The time right now is coming up on 8:50.
This program is supported by San Juan Health Partners Urology, providing a wide range of personalized services for the whole family, including children. Our caring professionals are dedicated to helping meet your urology health needs with skill, experience, and service you need. For a complete listing of our services and to learn more, visit sanjuanhealthpartners.com or call 505-609-6300. San Juan Health Partners Urology, a division of San Juan Regional Medical Center. The material discussed in this program is for information purposes only. It is not intended to be used as a recommendation for investing or as legal advice. Each person has his or her specific situation, circumstance, and objective, and should consult their own personal advisor or counsel.
Thursday morning here on KSJE, and it's time to check in on the economy. Jason Calcote is here from Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation to do just that. Jason, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here, and a little bit of a hiccup this week, right?
It's gotten a little bumpy this week.
Markets and everything else because of trade talks, I guess.
Right, exactly. We hit quite a bump on Tuesday. The Dow was down about 1.8%, S&P was down almost 1.7%, and NASDAQ was down almost 2%.
Right, and I guess folks weren't expecting maybe China to react the way that they did,
we came out really aggressive. I mean,
right.
Trump he threatened to to levy these tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. I think we threatened to do this a little while ago, and then it kind of got kicked down the road. So he's back at this again, and really people are estimating that it's going to take quite a hit on China. You know, they've got their GDP, which the gross domestic product. That's really all the goods and services that a company produces in a given span. You can call it their economy, really. Analysts are looking at China taking about a 1.2 to 1.5% hit on the growth of their GDP. Just to put that in perspective, the average growth of the U.S. GDP is about 3.2 over the last 60, 70 years. So quite a big hit. I mean, this could be detrimental to them.
And we are, if not the largest, a major trading partner with China.
I mean, U.S. and China are the two biggest economies in the world.
And
so this is having global ramifications. These disagreements that we can't seem to come together on.
Interesting. Now things have calmed down since then a little bit,
a little bit
market-wise,
right?
There's still back and forth trade talks, but at least the markets have settled down a little.
Exactly. They're supposed to have a delegation here today and tomorrow. To kind of try to hash this out, because not only did our administration threaten to levy these tariffs, they've also had a threat on an additional 25% levy on another $325 billion worth of Chinese goods shortly. So, I mean, they're really going all in here. So we're really hoping we get something done. Us and the rest of the world are really kind of hinging on the talks today and tomorrow. That are supposed to take place. So.
And I would assume that would have some ramifications for the U.S. economy, too, if consumers are paying more for some of the products we are getting from China, which are a lot of things, I would think.
Definitely, it's going to get hit at the consumer level, and then, you know, with this market falling, we've seen things like Caterpillar that have a big presence in China for all the construction that's going on there. Taking a huge hit. These chip makers that are, you know, NVIDIA and Apple, both took big hits on Tuesday as well. I think NVIDIA fell about 3.75%, and Apple fell almost 3% as well. So big ramifications for not only companies but consumers as well in the U.S.
Interesting. All right. Well, how's oil and gas doing?
Well, and that's the thing. The tension with China is also affecting this global economy, and it's affecting oil. You know, we've got oil slipping right now. We're at about $61.50 a barrel. And it's slipped among the trade tensions between, like I said, the world's two biggest economies, really. And it's overshadowed the supply concerns from Iran and Venezuela. And so
they're not producing much at all. At least Venezuela isn't. Iran has other problems.
Well, Iran does. Venezuela is still in the midst of their economic crisis that's going on. We're not really sure who has the power at this point. And then Iran, I mean, we've really kind of buckled down on the
sanctions.
The sanctions.
And waivers, I guess, too, is what we've been kind of canceling.
Exactly.
Trade waivers for folks.
Enough so that they've actually threatened to abandon the 2015 nuclear accord. And so we really don't want that to happen. You know, that would lead to some unrest in the Middle East again. And so we want them to stick to that. We hope we can work together to kind of...
But isn't that what we did?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, we did it, so okay, all right.
No, so I don't know. There's a lot of speculation swirling on whether or not the major producers, such as Saudi Arabia, are going to kind of pump up their production to get with the supply crunch and get the global supply back up.
Interesting. All right. And you have some interesting news about natural gas that you have discovered, which I think is kind of fascinating with some of these things that some of these inventors and folks are thinking about trying to do with natural gas.
I agree. No, I actually have something cool to say about natural gas. You know, we talk about how it's hovering around 250 to 275, which it still is. I mean, it's at 259 right now. So much lower than we would like to see it here. But an interesting thing that I came across, the Winklevoss twins.
Remember them from the Facebook days, right?
Most people know them from the Social Network movie. You know, they got in a legal disagreement.
Scuffle with Mr. Zuckerberg.
That's right.
And didn't end up on the right side of that one.
They didn't, but they walked away with some money. And,
they did.
So they're working with a Dallas-based private equity firm that are funding the idea to burn natural gas for on-site electricity. Natural gas in places like the Permian is trading below zero. I mean, they're having to haul people to take it away. And so their idea is to have these mobile generators that will essentially power everything around the drill site on natural gas.
With natural gas.
And so one way to use it, you know, without having to pump it anywhere.
And
then another thing that they've been working on, I think we've talked about it in the past a little bit. It's in the news quite a bit. The cryptocurrency thing that's going on. Bitcoin had this bubble a little while ago. I
don't even know how it's doing these days, but it's probably not doing as well as it was.
Not nearly as well as it was when everybody was jumping on the bandwagon.
But still has a future.
It still has a future. It's still, it's still very new tech, and people aren't really sure what to do with it yet, especially traders, the SEC, places like that, regulators. But they've got this idea that they can have these small data centers around the well sites that can run on natural gas and mine for cryptocurrency.
Interesting.
So again, thinking outside the box, I guess, to be able to use this glut of a supply of natural gas that the U.S. has that we really don't know what to do with.
Okay. So, and if anything's good for the natural gas business, it's good for the Salmon Basin.
That's right. If we can ramp up demand a little bit, then
can we be the cryptocurrency provider of the world here in the Salmon Basin?
The crypto capital of the world.
Wow.
We'll see.
All right. There you go. I need to copyright that or something.
Yeah.
Write that down somewhere. Great. Jason, thanks so much for coming in this week.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it very much. That's Jason Calcote, everyone, from Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation. He is with us every week to talk about the economy right here on KSJE Farmington.
Did you enjoy that podcast? We hope that you did. And if you did, share it with your friends. And if you really want to keep podcasts like this coming, please support KSJE. You can do it easily online at ksje.com.